building a new company from scratch is an exercise in pain and uncertainty, because there's always someone who's doing better than you. There's always a metric you're not meeting. There's always a competitor doing something slightly different than you are that worries you. So yeah, it's the pain I wanted. People ask me, how do you like to being a founder? And I'm like, I'm getting what I signed up for.
Right.
I'm getting the sleepless nights and the stress and the joys when things work and the uncertainty when it doesn't.
Hey, and welcome to this episode of Build versus Buy, a 30-minute conversation with product and engineering leaders about situations during their career where they've had to decide whether to build or buy. If you'd like to be a guest, reach out to me at manggit@useanvil.com. That's MANGGIT@useanvil.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube, or leave us a rating/review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Enjoy this episode. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Build vs. Buy podcast. I'm your host, Mang-Git Ng, founder and CEO of Anvil, the fastest way to build software for paperwork. And today as my guest, I have John-Denis Greze, also known as JDG. We've crossed paths way back in our Dropbox days, and I'm really excited to have him on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mang-Git. I don't feel like Dropbox was that long ago. I don't feel that much older, but yeah, it's good to see you again. Yeah, intro for me. I was a CTO at Plaid for most of the last 7 years, and then about a year ago, started a company in the tax space called Town. We're trying to be the tax department for every SMB out there. So basically, use AI to automate most of what goes into tax prep and tax advisory work for small businesses.
Awesome. You stole the thunder there. I would love to talk a little bit more about your background, actually. So why don't we start from maybe the beginning? Just talk about your journey in tech. How did you become CTO at Plaid? And then how did you decide to step away from that to go back super small?
Yeah, I'm old. I'm like 46 years old. So journey in tech is very long. I did a bunch of stuff after college. Studied CS undergrad. Did a bunch of stuff, and ended up building software for like in the finance hedge fund space. And that's what I was doing in the like late 2000s, early teens. And I started getting this feeling that if you want to do great engineering, you just really need to move to Silicon Valley. I think that's less true today, but I think it was definitely true, 15 years ago. So I was lucky. I had a friend who just started working at Dropbox, and Dropbox was, at the time, there were about 100 people and they were fast growing, and somehow I finagled an interview. And I don't think I did that well at the interview because they had me do like a take home that was like, I don't know, it was like a 12-hour take home, like just a monster like coding assignment. And I did well enough in that they called me and they were like, well, we're not sure if you're going to make it here, but we'd be willing to extend an offer.
The ultimate neg right there. It's like, hey, do this 12-hour thing, and then we don't know, maybe.
Well, to be clear, I'm not sure I would hire me definitely not based on the resume. And I also, I hadn't worked like in traditional tech here, like hedge fund space, pretty different. And so I was decent, but I don't think I knew how to build the kind of software that the companies, at least out here at the time, were looking for. But look, they saw something in me. They gave me the offer, and that was I got very lucky, and that was a big kind of change in career trajectory for me. So I joined Dropbox as an IC, but I was in my 30s, and you'll remember this, but the company's median age, like the median age, was probably 24 years old, maybe 25 when I joined. I mean, it was a lot of very, very smart people, who were like 2 to 4 years out of MIT was like the median tenure. And so as someone who was older, who'd done a little bit of management, it was like there was a very logical path from like senior IC to staff engineer to becoming like a tech lead manager to eventually becoming a manager and lead of leads. So in 4 years there, I kind of like really grew, not just like technically, but also as someone who was able to get kind of his thoughts on like architecture and technical directions, like translated to what a team would do, what multi-teams should focus on. And so from then, by the time Dropbox, after 4 years of Dropbox, it's like a 2,000 person company. So that's insane, right? You join, it's like 100 plus, and then 4 years later it's 2,000. So it changed a lot. And I missed the early days. And I thought I wanted to go somewhere early again and just get another shot at the journey. But as opposed to being, kind of like in middle management, I wanted to do it as the VPN, because I had this conceit, I still conceited, and you have ego and you think you can do it better, or you have your own opinions about how to run a team. And so yeah, I joined Plaid. I got very lucky again. My selection criteria for Plaid, the reason I was really excited to go there is I really like the founders, number one. It's actually a pretty good selection criteria if you're going to be VP anywhere. Like, are you going to get along and want to spend half of your life working with the founders?
No.
And then number two, the customers of Plaid were developers. And when you're an engineer, building something for other engineers is a blast because you're the user, right?
Yep.
You understand the user, their problems. And then the third reason was it was a platform. And the cool thing about platforms is you get to see an entire ecosystem grow on top of it, right? And it was pretty early in fintech. I mean, it was obvious that fintech was going to happen, but Plaid was clearly going to like see the innovation happen on top of it. So I joined, and the business it was way more successful than I would have expected at the time. I mean, I don't think the current number is like public, but it went from less than 10 million to above 300 million easily in the 7 years that I was there. So it was a blast. I went from head of engineering to CTO, and I would say my last 2 years I did mostly like CPO, like chief product officer work, as opposed to chief technical officer work. And I think by the end, I started to feel personally like there was a little bit less growth for me on the technical side, and what I
Yeah.
enjoyed the most was the interaction between the product roadmap and the customers. And then over time Plaid went more enterprise, and so it was
hmm
like with these big partners or these large banks or these large fintech apps, and we're really asking the question like, hey, beyond just the data connectivity, what can we do for them that
Right.
would really solve core business problem or help accelerate their business? And that was super enjoyable, right? Figuring out like the technical constraints, the market constraints, the product constraints, and finding something that solves for all of them. So I was doing that, and then I realized that effectively that was like 10% of my job,
hmm
and the other 90% was running 1,000-person organization. And I was like, well, if this is what I like to do, I should just go really small again.
Yeah.
But I should do it with a little bit more of a go-to-market plus product hat. And so I started to talk to the board and the founders, and I was like, hey, I think it's like kind of the end of my journey. And it actually took me a really long time to leave because I wanted it done right. I wanted
hmm
the company to hire the right leaders and make sure everything was in a good place. So it took me like over 6 months to kind of slowly make myself totally redundant and not useful to the company. Yeah. And after that happened, I hesitated a little bit between like, do I want to join something early or start? But the reality is, if you're, if the itch that I really wanted was this like product uncertainty, go to market uncertainty, like the ultimate version of that, like the hard mode version of that is to be a founder. And I thought I would try that to see. I'd done it a long time ago, actually, before I worked in hedge fund space, but I was very mature and not really. I didn't have the right mental framework for being a founder. But yeah, I thought I would try it again, and it's been a great ride. When we're 10 months into the journey, I cannot tell you if we're successful or not. I
Yeah.
for sure externally project a lot of success, and objectively a lot of metrics are going well, but building a new company from scratch it's an exercise in pain and uncertainty, because there's always someone who's doing better than you. There's always a metric you're not meeting. There's always like a competitor that's doing something slightly different than you are that worries you. So yeah.
Yeah.
And so right now, yeah, so it's the pain I wanted. People ask me, how do you like it being a founder? And I'm like, I'm getting what I signed up for. I'm
Right.
getting the sleepless nights and the stress and the joys when things work and the uncertainty when it doesn't.
You said a bunch there. I do want to unpack some of it, but I think the first thing that jumped out at me was you mentioned how you got your interview with Dropbox. And a little bit of history. John-Denis was in my reporting structure. I was reporting into somebody that reported to John-Denis when I was at Dropbox. And initially, like when I interviewed at Dropbox, I didn't get past the phone screen. Like the recruiter said no. And the non-technical recruiter said no. And then I got my lucky break, which was the company I decided to join, which is a small startup, actually got acquired by Dropbox. And I think that just what keeps coming back to me is I feel very fortunate that I have this network, this wonderful group of people that I got to work with. But you said this yourself, is it feels like a lucky break. It feels like we all got our foot into the door because of happenstance, right? Maybe a little bit, but it does also, we
Yeah.
were open to the lucky break. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just forget Dropbox, right? Like the interview process at any tech company where you're whether you're spending 5 hours with a candidate or 8 hours with a candidate, whether you're doing a take home or not, it's a sampling thing, right? You're trying a small amount of time to reduce this human to a like strong hire, no hire decision. And that's just really tough. And there's a ton of information loss. And that's just inevitable, right? There's like nothing you can do about it. And there's also some people, interviews, who are good at interviewing are not good on the job. There's people who are, the opposite. I think from a company's perspective, you're trying to get better at it, right? But just like fundamentally, there's millions of companies or thousands of companies that are trying to hire thousands and thousands of engineers all the time. There's some companies that just like do the same thing as the Googles or whatnot. But there are a lot of companies trying to like figure out different ways, new ways to interview. And I don't think anyone's like solved this problem because I don't think fundamentally it's solvable, right?
Yeah.
You can't reduce a human to these small interactions. So you try your best, right? And I think the longer the engagement, the better it is. Like I have a friend, small startup, like his philosophy is like, we give everyone a month-long like test contract to work at the company. And I was like, sure, then they get great signal on whether the person can work there. But like a lot of people aren't going to quit their job to do a month-long test contract, right? So that's the other thing on the other flip side is like, as someone who's interviewing, you're getting optionality because you can go talk to a bunch of people. You can just spend like 8 hours with them. You can or cannot get offers. You can read a lot of materials online about how you can like gamify the interview process.
Yeah.
That's just what it is, right? It's like you get those advantages as a candidate, and as a business, you get some disadvantages, which some people will pass and won't do well. Some people will. So I don't know if there's like a solve. I will say I give this talk to like new grads a little bit. Like people have this idea of fairness, like the world owes them fairness. They owe them objectivity.
Yeah.
The world doesn't owe anybody anything, right? We live in an absurdist world. Like in humans, we try to impose our values on this universe. The universe doesn't give a shit about us, right?
That's
Supernova,
true.
close by, we're all dead. It's over, right? All of humanity is gone. So nothing cares about us. No one owes you fairness, right? And things like networking, and networking really means there's someone that you know that you've impressed enough through your interaction with them that they respect you enough that they're going to tell someone else, hey, we should hire this person. And that is a proof point that you're someone that's maybe worth working for. Is it objective? No. Is it unfair that someone that doesn't have the network like wouldn't be able to get their foot in the door? Of course it's unfair, but it's just like that is humanity. Like there's no objective fairness that is trying to be imposed. So I tell folks like everyone has opportunity to network in their life, right? It might not network where they want to be, but you have opportunity to impress others, to get other people to like you, to do favors for others, to spend your times in ways that are like short term. It's not sure what the ROI is, but those things in the long term tend to work out, in my opinion. You will have times in your life where there's someone that you've talked to, someone you've met, someone you've impressed, and they open a door for you, right? You need to invest in that just like anything. And it may not seem fair when someone who's invested the time in that gets something that you wouldn't. Certainly isn't fair when it's someone who like went to the right school, has more money and whatever. But there's plenty of people who don't have those things, who have figured out a way to network and to open the door. And I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't realize that's in some way, shape, or form part of the game that we're all playing. So
I mean that's
yeah, you crushed it at Dropbox. So yeah, obviously, you're like WTF. Like I was very successwould there, but I couldn't have gotten the job through the interview. Like that sucks.
In some ways, it's almost I would say in some ways it's kind of like a cynical view. It's hey, our uncertain ROI, but it's also another way to look at it is like doing things for people, for others, as part of just like putting good out of the world, knowing that it'll come back to you in some way, shape, or form. And that's just being a good human. Yeah.
And sometimes being a good human works out, sometimes it doesn't, right? But it'll never, I don't think the luck, like, I think on average it costs lots of people. If you don't create the situations, then there's almost no chance of the luck kind of benefiting you. You have to put some work into it.
Absolutely. And I actually think this is one great segue into another thing I want to talk about that you mentioned, which is your role at Plaid going from, or even at Dropbox, when we went from IC to management, and then Plaid, you went from kind of like high level management to CTO. And like there's some management lessons maybe you've had, and how did the CTO role really differ from like a VP of Eng role? Like I think it's a very different role. I think a lot of people don't realize that, but it is a very different role at most companies.
The management lesson one's like tough. I try to be very pragmatic, problem solver approach to management. Like the fundamental thing for me, like when I look at any company, is like you have a lot of people that are trying to do the right thing. Like my belief is like humans are usually trying to do good, to do great, and unfortunately, organizational dynamics get in the way of people doing the right thing, right? And management, your job is to get people the incentives, the information, the to remove the friction for them to do the right thing. And so the lesson for me is like you are running a system and there's all these things that are getting in the way of people doing the right thing. Every quarter, find one thing that's getting in the way and solve it. And you just do that over and over again and you never fix it. There's always a new thing that's getting in the way of the right outcome. But your job as a leader, right? VPN, CTO, kind of, we can talk about the difference, but it's to like find the things that are getting in the way of the right outcomes for the business, which usually come from people trying to do the right things. And that can look like tons of stuff, right? It's like, politics, like when people optimize for their fiefdom as opposed to what's right for the company, usually that means because they see value in their career that's not aligned with what's right for the company. So you can like force them to do what's right for the company. You can figure out how to tweak the incentives, right? Like, but there's something broken in the system. Like this person wants to do good work,
right?
But they aren't doing work. They're doing work that where they're,
benefits themselves, not the
optimizing for
company.
their title, or it's not right for the company. What's happening? Maybe they want a title because they want to switch jobs later. And they know they can't get the title because you, like an idiot, have designed the leveling system where this thing says you need at least 35 people to get director, and they want to get director. That's like stupid. You should ask the question, like, do they have the skills to be director? What's our philosophy around giving titles? Like, is there like another solution that doesn't make them feel like they have to get to 35 reports to get the thing that they really care about, which is a different title on LinkedIn, right? And that's what's getting in the way of them making the right decision. And once you know that, like systematically across a lot of stuff, I think you can be a great leader. And so that's the way I look at it. Then whenever I found a problem, I would spend time, I would talk to other leaders and find out what's the range of solutions. Fundamentally, for me, most things you don't need to think truly from first principles all the time. Like you could just take a good solution from somewhere else, adapt it to your situation, and usually that gets you like an 80-20 outcome. It's not always true, but sometimes you do need to think outside the box, and then just do that over and over again. And you do that for 7 years, and I think you could be pretty successful. The head of engineering, like CTO difference, I think there's like the traditional way that you would look at it. Like the CTO is more concerned about technical decisions, architecture, using technical kind of breakthroughs to unlock product roadmap and go-to-market opportunities. That would be like the CTO. The VPN is more concerned around hiring, like making sure the team is executing at a high level, like meeting goals and prioritization, right? That's like the common separation. At Plaid, when I was CTO, I would say I was more CPO than CTO. So I spent a lot more time on the product side of the uncertainty, not on the technical side, because Plaid has a very IC driven, like staff, principal engineer kind of culture around technical decisions. And I didn't feel like at CTO I really needed to be there. There were enough really good staff and principal engineers who could own technical decision making around pretty complex parts of the product. And at least for my last 2 years, most of the technical team was so good that I think more of the risk and opportunity for the business was on the product side, right? And the other lens for me about the different. So I don't think you can be a great head of engineering, honestly, if you aren't willing to go deep on the technical side when it matters. I think that separate, like maybe you have a CTO next to you that you really trust who can tell you what's happening. But I think if you can't like go deep, it's like the founder mode equivalent to the head of engineering is like you got to go like CTO mode, where you're like, something doesn't smell good over there. And it's not like a systems, people management, recruiting thing. It's a like, something is borked in the technology and I no longer trust my team to tell me what's really fucking going on. And I need to go in and I need to like force different decisions. I think having that superpower as a VPN is great. But that is effectively for me what a CTO kind of should do all the time, is always be figuring out like, where's the code smell, the architecture smell getting in the way of a 2 to 3 year goal for the company, like a long-term vision aligned with a technical investment.
That's interesting because I guess like my mental model has always been more of I guess like the company that I came of age at was Dropbox. So my mental model for CTO was always more of a CTO is like the charismatic leader, VP of N just operating the team, essentially, making sure all the wheels are bolted on right and everything. Maybe that's a skewed perception of it, given just my personal experience.
I think, yeah, I mean, I think the CTO needs to be very technically respected because
Yeah.
they need to have, I don't know if charisma is how I would describe it. Like they have to have enough respect that when they put their foot down or make a hard technical decision, like,
That's
the senior engineers will be like, I trust that person, like
yeah.
that guy or that gal knows what they're talking about. Like we're gonna go and do that because engineers can be very skeptical.
Really?
It's so you need to have a little bit of that gravitas. I think the charisma it could come from the CTO. I think it depends on the company. Like I've always I think of the product vision as being the place where you really need like charisma
Yeah.
because you need people to imagine a future that doesn't exist today from a product perspective, but I think is harder than imagining a future that doesn't exist from a technical perspective,
Hmm.
which is more what a CTO has to do. I think the danger with charisma, by the way, in any leadership position, is if you're charismatic, people may not question some of the things you say,
Yeah.
and they should if you're wrong,
Yeah.
right? And so charisma can like allow you to really commit to things that aren't right for the business. So it's a little dangerous. It's like less charismatic and people follow is almost better than very charismatic and people follow, in my opinion, because it leaves more room for naysaying or questioning
This
false truths.
this is honestly one of like my personal challenges I feel like in starting a company and leading is really like communicating like what's in my head in an articulate manner down to like two people around me so that they can follow and or understand what I'm saying or challenge me even because I think that's the gap that I've noticed for myself where some people say, hey, Mang-Git's just making decisions there. And like in my head, it made total logical sense, but I just didn't verbalize it.
Yeah, someone told me this one time. Like, there's no way in the world that you can over communicate. It's
Yeah.
like impossible to over communicate. I struggle with what you're saying all the time because my natural inclination, I'm like more of an introvert
Yeah.
and I'm like a deep thinker in my head. And so like I could be way ahead of what I've explained to people. And then I feel like I have to do this catching up and I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm already here. Like, what's going on? It's just tough. But someone a long time ago told me, like, you, you can never be accused of over communicating. Like, before people come to you and they're like, oh my God, I'm just tired of you explaining this thing for like the nth time. Like, if you get that kind of feedback, you're over communicating.
Yeah.
But I, for sure, have never been able to be on that side of the spectrum. But it's a real challenge, right? Like, all what is teamwork? Teamwork is a group of people
Yeah.
agreeing to build something together that doesn't exist today, right? Like that isn't there. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a job. And getting even 3, 5 people on the same page about something is just it's just so hard. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So if you saw
absolutely.
that, you can send me I want the blog post and I want the YouTube video.
I'll create a product out of it and then you can sign up for it. Yeah. Okay. I do want to quickly touch on Town and why you decided to start a company and then want to pivot the conversation away from management philosophy and company building to actually the meat of today's conversation. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about your decision to start Town and like why did you sign up for hard mode essentially, or why was that enticing to you?
Yeah, part of it's ego, right? It's just like this thing that's hard and you want to see if you have it in you. I believe I like to be challenged, right? And there's a lot of things about being a founder that I don't think were in my skill set, and I wanted to see if I could learn them and do them and do them, maybe better than other people thought I could or than I thought I could. Who knows?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what I did then is I had a lot of bad ideas, and I don't think I have any insights in the like idea maze, but I ended up talking to people about the ideas that I had, and someone that I talked to, actually someone that Jeff, ended
Mhm.
up, who'd worked in the accounting space. He was like, "Hey, listen, like no one's built a product." No one's productized the business tax prep experience. He was
Yeah.
like, what TurboTax has done to personal tax, no one has done to business tax. And there's all these SaaS companies that are offering, say, bookkeeping or like financial platforms. But whenever it comes to tax, they have to refer to a traditional CPA firm or they don't help their customers. He's like, I think there's a product there. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so we did some like discovery together. And the moment that sold it for me actually was when potential partners, like a month after I talked to them in early discovery, discussion, they called back and they were like, "Hey, are you building that thing? If you were, like, we would use it."
Yeah.
And that's like rare when you have convos. So I was like, oh, that tells me that there's a problem here. And then the second part was the SMB owners don't have high NPS around tax. Some do
Yeah.
and are happy, but a lot don't. And enough.
Would
There's so many
recommend paying
SMBs.
taxes to my friend.
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
wouldn't refer their CPA, and you're like, well, okay. And then the third part, which is weird, and got very excited about selling to SMBs, which most VCs will tell you is like a terrible idea and it's really difficult, and it is. It's not a terrible idea, but it's very difficult. But I've been doing, B2B SaaS, selling to startups for a while, and the idea of selling to more smaller businesses, individuals. And I talk to the business owners. They're like mini founders, right? These are
Yeah.
people who are putting their kids through school and like saving for their retirement, like by running, like a dentistry practice or a small corner store or like a services business. And they could be working for a big company, but they choose not to. And so I really like that mindset. And I was like, I'm really connecting with these people. Like I kind of want to work with them more closely.
Yeah.
And so that was exciting for me. And
If-
those were it. Then we started building the product, and it we got our first partners to send us SMBs, and pretty quickly we got off the ground. The nice thing about selling tax is like it's not a new product, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a new product, but everyone's already paying for tax prep if you're a small business. So you're not inventing a market, right? The bet you're taking is more, can I build a product where today there's a service?
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's really hard, but it's not like, is the market size there problem? It's a more like, can I just build something, that wasn't there before?
In a lot of ways, it feels like you're building for yourself again. You mentioned you went to Plaid because it's like engineers building stuff for engineers. You're a founder building things for other founders, small business owners, and there's the level of a connection there, it feels like.
I don't know if I'm totally building for myself, because I think I'm building for a version of myself, because I've done business taxes, I've run like small businesses before, but I think it's more like I have a lot of empathy and really like my customer more so than building for myself. And what's interesting internally, everyone on the team here has turned into a giant tax nerd. It's like one of the funniest things I've ever experienced, because you like come up with a startup idea in a market, and then you go and hire people. We're hiring really smart people who've not thought about tax before, and then a month later at lunch they're like nerding out about the tax code, and you're like, yeah, that's what happens. And I think when you're not building for yourself, the question is like, how do you become a nerd about the thing you're building for? Because I think if you don't have that love, it's really hard to build a great product fundamentally. So
especially in esoteric area where it's okay, you really got to understand it.
That's right, exactly. Although too, because a lot of people won't even take an interview with us because they don't care about tax. But I'm like, actually, that's great. Like, let me find the people who think this could be like cool to learn out about.
Right.
Tax actually pretty compatible with engineering, like
breaking systems, like finding loopholes, finding edge cases,
finding optimizations in the code. It's fun.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was a good pick.
Awesome. Definitely want to pivot to the meat of today's conversation, which is building versus buying. And I'm sure as an eng leader, you've seen these decisions countless times. And I'm sure you've had experiences where it went well, it went poorly, but I want to focus in on one, maybe two, that you're really interested in talking about that might provide some insight to our listeners as to how they should be making these decisions going forward.
Yeah. I know it's your whole podcast, but this is like a tough one for everybody involved, right? So usually, like the three examples that popped in my head immediately for build v buy was, so at Plaid, so for listeners who don't know, Plaid helps consumers and businesses connect their bank accounts to fintech apps. So say you connect Venmo or Robinhood as a new user, they need to transfer money in from your bank account. They need to verify your identity, and they use Plaid to do that. And effectively, the way it happens is through OAuth, you're kind of connecting your bank to Robinhood for purposes of moving funds in so that you can buy stock on Robinhood. And there's also like a fraud and identity verification component as part of that. So when we built Plaid initially, there was no there was no concept of remember me, meaning if a customer had connected one app to their bank account and then they want to connect another app, you would just start from scratch and go through the full authentication and authorization flow. And maybe like 4 years ago, there was such a large number of people who were repeat connectors that we were like, hey, we should build a remember me experience for the user. And as soon as that happened, there was a question around how would you recognize that the user is coming back? And because Plaid is embedded, there's like, you can use cookies to do some things, but you probably, because of fraud and other things, you probably need to do a lot more things around fraud, device identification, device fingerprinting, browser fingerprinting. And there's third parties that offer solutions for this that are pretty good and quite battle tested. And so we were sitting there internally, and when we were starting this project, and we did a whole bunch of due diligence on whether we should use third parties or build in-house. And the end result is it's like most of it's in-house in the end, even though we knew it would take a really long time to build capability that would be on the same level as the third parties. It's like, why? Right. And the reason why, right, like core for me, if you're thinking build versus buy, I don't think the first question is the third party good enough for what you're doing if you're going to buy? I think the real question is, how strategic is it for you to own this thing given like the unknowns of the universe ahead of you? And so for us, if you think about like building a world-class remember me experience, reducing fraud in the ecosystem, those are like the two most important things that you need to get right when you're doing identity verification, embedded identity verification at scale for like financial use cases where money moves around. It was like, it's too strategic for us to trust someone else to do it. It's just like too core to the business, because this is one of those things that if we got it right and we can make it 5% better than everybody else, that would be 5% conversion that none of our competitors would have. And so then you're like, well, what if that 5% would come from how we do the device identification? And you're like, oh, well, if you don't control it, you may not have the option of getting that 5%. So that's one where, we really pushed hard on the build side for a lot of it, because we could just imagine a lot of futures where if we controlled it, we could do better than anybody else could.
It feels like the identity piece is also a prerequisite for for money movement, right? Like essentially enshrined in law that you need to know who you're moving money for. Arguably, it is very core to your product at Plaid, which is all about connecting financial systems.
Yeah, but you could, there are banks that outsource the login flow to third parties.
Yeah.
There's plenty of apps that use like, Google sign in and some of the like fingerprinting remembered functionality there. So I think it being core, I think people will make different choices. I think for us, like what I ask is this a dimension that I can truly differentiate the product on?
Yeah.
And if I can differentiate and it's strategic for me means it's like over a course of 12, 24 months, it's one of the top 3 important things for the business to get right. And that's why they're, like just building it in-house over time made sense. By the way, it doesn't mean that we started totally in-house. So this is the other thing about these things is how you architect it's really important, right? You could start by wrapping someone else for a bunch of stuff where eventually you'll bring it in-house, as long as the interface to what the partner that you're using is one that allows you over time to do more. Right. And so you can create a two-way door, right, out of what may look like a one-way door decision if you engineer it correctly, right? That's also some of what we did, like the early prototypes. We're like, to get early prototypes and early data on this stuff, we don't want to have to build this. It's hard to build. We're going to have to hire people with this background. So you can start with wrapping, but you wrap it in a way that it's easy to like throw away or move away from.
I guess the other thing you mentioned was like scale, like 5% better would mean a lot for Plaid, but that makes sense when you're at a Plaid scale. It feels like when everybody's using Plaid to connect.
Yeah, the reality is that like so for most things, 5% delta is not strategic. I agree with you. There's something that are very different about the Plaid space where basically everyone's fighting for the last 15% of conversion. So that 5% is actually a 30% delta increase over like the playing field.
Yeah.
Right. So it's actually much more substantial. But yeah, it depends on the business, like early versus later in the stage of a business. I mean, early on, often you don't even know what's strategic, right?
Right.
You're just like building lots of products to see what works. And if you don't know what's strategic, I think you should almost always just be like buy with enough like interfacing such that if once at upon time, if you realize one of those decisions is like, hey, that's actually a strategic advantage and that partner's not the right one, or like we need to bring it in-house, like you have that decision point. But when you don't even know what's strategic, like why would you invest, in-house? It's risky. Like the way, like my mental framework is, one, isn't strategic.
Yeah.
Right. And then number two, if it is strategic, do we have the capabilities and are we willing to invest in this area over a long period of time? Because sometimes what will happen is something is strategic, but you just know you're not going to have the stomach to invest at the level necessary to make it really good. And the reason that might be is because the external party, the partner, just can amortize the R&D across so many more customers that just like you're just never going to get there. And so that might be something it's like strategic, but it's just not, you're not in a universe where you have the ability to differentiate on that dimension. You just can't do it. You can't, you're never going to have the capability. In that case, you don't have a choice. You got to like partner. And then I think the other thing that I find that's interesting is sometimes something is not strategic. It's not strategic, and you're like think you should partner. I'll give you an example from town actually, and probably you shouldn't partner because the partnership ecosystem is so nascent that you don't know who the winners are going to be yet. And so if you partner with the wrong person, you're actually left behind. You'd be better off just like hacking your way yourself for longer until it is clear who's going to be the winner for that part of your product. So like a town example would be, we're like an AI, we use AI to do a bunch of stuff. So there's this whole like, what do we use for AI observability and for like agent execution framework, right? And there's a bunch of companies that are doing like AI observability. And like, frankly, it's just really not clear which one of them is going to win, which one's going to get acquired. It's like, so we need to be really good at agents. It's not clear to me that observability itself is strategic. What about agent execution? Not really clear if it's strategic, blah, blah. But even if you thought it was strategic, you wouldn't know who to pay.
Right.
Like, it's not clear who's going to have the best infra in that part of the player, in the market. And so then it's like, oh, well, even if we partner, we definitely don't want to commit to a partner for the long term because this stuff moving so fast. There's so much VC money going to this infra layer that in 6 months, someone else could be way ahead. So you feel like honestly a ton of risk if you're going to commit to a partner for any period of time because the market's not mature. And that's a weird one where actually we looked at it and we were like, we can build like an MVP version of this for our specific use case so fast using vibe coding, like you know what I mean, like so fast that it's just like not worth. It's like, why are we even comparing vendors and talking about 12-month deals? This doesn't make any sense. Like let's get something good enough in-house that's going to last us 12 months. We know we're going to have to partner. It's just in 12 months it'll be more clear who to partner with.
That's interesting too. You mentioned vibe coding and like just how fast you can build things nowadays. Does that actually shift the equation like significantly to build?
Yeah, 100%. Like Cursor Cloud will build my internal CRUD app in no time, and it's internal, right? So a bunch of the secure edge cases that you want to get right don't matter because it's only for internal users. And so I had actually built a bunch of the admin functionality for town, and I just Claude vibe coded what I needed in 30 minutes. And the coolest part of it is it just was using our full design system from the production app. And I was like, this is just faster. And so then everyone has just started for internal stuff. Everyone's just vibe coding their way to the internal tools. But you have to ask yourself, there's a bunch of software now that there's no way you would go and
it's just easier to prompt some AI agent to do it for you and instead of clicking buttons.
That's right.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed for myself and my wife who does do market research for AI is that these kind of like prompt vibe coding engines have certainly lowered the barrier to building things, but it doesn't necessarily make it faster. And a lot of times I find it's actually faster for me to go click those two buttons than it is to write a paragraph to describe what to do. I found this yesterday. I was trying to write a PRD for a feature that I want built, and I started writing the prompt into Claude so that I could format it into a PRD for me. And I was like, at the end of it, I had written the PRD, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to copy and paste this because Claude just added 10 pages of fluff to it for me, which I didn't need.
Yeah, PRD, when my co-founder accused it of being a bunch of AI slop, I felt really bad about it, which was basically like Claude had added 7 pages of,
It gave me a timeline, and it was like a 14-week timeline to build a feature, and I'm like, this is not acceptable.
Look, I'm much more. I'm in the camp where I shipped 4,000 lines of code in the last week and a half, and I'm coding maybe 10 hours a week. Now, is it great code? No, it's just crud, right? But fundamentally, for a bunch of different types of work, it's speeding me up a lot. For other types of work, it's either wasting time or not speeding me up. And my biggest challenge is in my brain, having the right mental model for like, when do I use AI for something or when do I not? Right. But as I get better at making that decision, there's a whole bunch of areas where I think the speed up is amazing. So some are obvious, like prototyping.
Yeah.
Where you just want to show your team, or you want to convince yourself, or you want to be able to go in like a research session with a customer with a new feature, and you just don't care about a bunch of stuff. You just want to get it out enough that you can get feedback. I think that universe of things is totally different. And the prototypes are real prototypes. They're like, you can show a customer with real data, a new dashboard that does the thing that you talked about with them 2 days earlier in a sales call. And they're going to be like, what? And it's crazy. Now, turning that into a robust feature probably isn't that much faster than before. But you know this, right? At Dropbox, we probably spend more time arguing about what to build than building it. And so if you can speed up prototyping 10x or 20x for a lot of organizations, right, where the deciding what to do takes more time than building it, that's a huge benefit, right? I think where you get in trouble is you like vibe code it, and then you're like, let me put the vibe code into production. And that's just like, it's just not, that's not great.
I'm not looking forward to that future where everything on the web is vibe coded and not productionized, and you're just like, oh, what's happening here?
And if it works, the other thing that's been interesting is refactors, where you have tests are a lot faster. So I think like one realization that I've had is that some kind of architecture mistakes that before would have really sucked to refactor are much easier to refactor today. So if you have pretty good integration tests and you have a wrong internal API boundary and you need to move things from one side of the API to the other, that is much faster than it was. And before, you would have hated that work. Oh my God, it would have just sucked. There's like 25 call points that are all missing an argument, and then you've got to like thread it through all this stuff. It'll do that stuff faster. So interestingly, there's also some kinds of technical debt which don't worry me as much as they used to. So I don't know. We're early. Yeah, it's early stages on this, but I'm very bullish on our ability to build a lot more software a lot faster.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Same with us. It's just, like you said, need to figure out where that split needs to happen. Maybe not writing PRDs. That's probably not the right place. Awesome. John-Denis, thank you for all that insight. I do want to move on to our last questions that we always ask our guests. The first one is, what are the things that you've been working on personally or professionally that you're really excited about? Share something with the audience that you would like them to know.
Professionally, I'm rebuilding our partner dashboard right now. And as I said, I wrote 4,000 lines of code last week. That gets me, I'm very excited about that. First, I built like a to-do list system for myself, which doesn't have a database. It's kind of weird. It's just LLMs. Like say I'm like, I need to remind myself in a week to do X. The LLM will just put in a giant text file, like remind a week from this date to do X. And then I have a batch script that literally reads a giant text file. It just reads the entire text file like once a day. And then it just like writes an email to me if there's anything that's supposed to be done that way. It's kind of weird, honestly, but it works really well. And I think it would make most engineers' head explode because it like, it's like not structured at all, whether something is done or not, whether it's on repeat, it's just like words in the text file. Like if you want to remind something weekly, it just says like remind weekly. And then it just You know, I don't know. Most of the time, it realizes that it's the right day of the week to do it.
This is actually fascinating to me because it feels like we're moving away from a world where engineering is deterministic to like essentially management. You're now managing a team of AI agents that are reading prose, and if they interpret it incorrectly, you're going to have a big mistake on your hands. But that's management. That's people.
I think, yeah, we're back to like, like physical file folders where the process of something is you take out the Monday folder and you look in there and figure out it's just an LLM is doing. I don't have an army of them. I just have the one, but it's pretty funny. And then I write little extensions for it. So I give it little extra tools so I can put stuff on my calendar and whatnot.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know.
What about something you've purchased recently you love or you would never buy again?
I haven't paid for it, but granola is pretty cool. Okay. I mean, Clay's, if you do go to market, Clay's, it does feel sometimes like it takes a PhD to get good at it, but I really like those two. Yeah, granola is interesting because it's like there's a bunch of other companies that have built like meeting recording, but I think the fact that they really focus on the UI on the phone and making that really good, and it's just, I don't know, I'm a UI person, like I need the fact that the UI is a little easier to use, like gets me to want to use that more than the other tools that we have. Yeah, it would be Clay, granola, and then Grok, Claude, and Cursor. Like those three to do things is pretty great.
All the AI LLMs.
Yeah, I didn't say Gemini. I would say all of them. We do use all of them at work. I think my personal workflow is very like Cursor plus Claude, and then I like the lack of, I like Grok's lack of political correctness. I don't know why. I feel like sometimes I want it like raw, and I like it to spice my life.
You want it to slap you in the face a little bit when it responds. What?
Yeah, it's like a rude, like a rude coworker. You kind of need the rude coworker. Yeah. Like you get value out of the rude coworker. That's what Grok is for me.
Yeah. Awesome. JDG, thank you for coming on the show today. It was...
No, I want yours now.
Oh, you want
I want one tool. Yeah, that I should be using.
One tool. Oh man. I have something that I did buy recently that I'm very excited about. And recently, it was yesterday, and it was a Facebook marketplace purchase. So there is a sleeper sofa that made by a company called American Leather that's extremely comfortable. We slept on it at a friend's house. We actually preferred it to the actual guest room that they gave us with a real bed. And it's a very nice sofa. They typically retail like entry level for a queen size sleeper sofa is like $6,000 and up. But because these are like sleepers, they're not that often. They're not heavily trafficked. They're not used a lot. So you can find really good ones on Facebook Marketplace. This was one that we picked up yesterday, and it's actually right here. You can see the corner of it and the screen here. So yeah, so that's there. With all this family visiting all the time now, we're like running out of space. At one point we had, I think it was like 14 people in the house all at once for 5 days. So yeah, so that's something that I do really like. In terms of tools for work, I
like how we're like talking about AI and tools, and you went full like handmade leather sofa.
It's not leather. It's called American Leather. But it's cloth. Yeah. But that's just like I don't know. I think a lot of times I live in the digital world so much. That's such a large part of my life. The physical world is where I derive joy, right? I know I've said this before on other recordings. It's like I have one go-to t-shirt brand, which is American Giant. I guess American is the but American Giant. American Giant, it's an SF-based t-shirt company. They make an excellent t-shirt. It's a little bit pricier, but they last. And it's 100% American-sourced cotton, American milled cotton, and American-made t-shirts, which is a little insane if you think about it. So that's cool. And in terms of tools, I started trying using Claude Code. I got it set up the other day. I haven't really dug into it. I've been using Cursor a lot with various models, testing them out, but mostly just like the Cursor IDE. I heard there's this company called Windsurf that was succeeding, then not succeeding, then now it's going to be even more successful maybe for some portion of the company. We should maybe try that one out. That's been the drama of the week, or of the weekend, I should say. So it's been crazy.
You'll be happy with Claude.
Yeah, I've heard good things. I think Claude is certainly, they seem to be taking the lead in terms of the Claude plus Cursor is kind of like the winning combo right now, but that'll shift.
until the Windsurf team at Google does whatever the next thing is. I want the VC subsidies of the foundational models.
Right.
We're net beneficiaries of that for a long time.
Just wait till we're getting charged full price on those. That'll be a problem. Cool. Well,
look, it was great chatting.
Yeah, it was awesome. Thanks for coming on the show, and looking forward to getting this one out to the audience. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening. If you found this show valuable, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or here on YouTube. We'd love if you could leave us a rating and/or a review, as that helps others find this podcast. See you next time.